businesses that don't go digital will die.
Right.
And that's kind of down to three factors, really, and some of the other speakers talked about them. But first of all, technology. Technology is changing everything. Software is eating the world. What that means is it's disrupting every industry now. It's not just tech anymore. It's, taxis, currency, financial services, payments. It's completely changing everything. So taking out the middlemen or disintermediation is happening in every industry. So that's got a long way to go. Healthcare is changing. And, if you're on the wrong side of that transition, then your time span is limited, I think. The second reason then, I'd say, is just demographics. The customers who like to use these non-digital channels are dying, right? The older people, younger people want to use the newer channels. It's just the march of time is going to take care of that. And then cost. I mean, a lot of us kind of grew up in the call center world, and I ran the call center division at Nortel, which became Avaya, and then did the same at Cisco. So I kind of feel responsible for some of that experience that everyone has to deal with. But $300 billion is spent every year around the world in call centers. That's between people, technology, and minutes. So just for comparison purposes, if you compare that to the whole digital advertising world, the whole market that Google and all those guys are aimed at, right? That's $100 billion, right? So think about that, right? Cost and the ability to take that cost out. What that means for us in the IT industry is that marketing is coming after your contact center budget, and you need to think about getting ready for that. So I think it's inevitable, and the opportunity for us in this industry is to lead that transition and get ahead of it. And I think some of the stuff we heard from the speakers earlier today gives us great kind of encouragement to go after that.
It's interesting. A lot of people think that banking is very traditional business, and actually Bank of Ireland, 250-year-old institution. We still have a court. We call the board the court, the governor the chairman. So there's a lot of history and legacy. But if you took from Nicola the amount of tweets that are bank related, it probably indicates the percentage of activity through which we all and all our customers are engaging and using digital to actually service their day-to-day lives and their day-to-day needs. Over 200 customers a minute are engaging with us through our direct channels. So that's through the phone, and we consider that as part of the digital estate, of course, through online, through mobile, through tablet, and certainly through social, which we've seen a huge explosion in that as well. But having that very traditional bank, which is branch-centric, and with the explosion of mobile and digital, and we've had online for 17 years now, but mobile is only 2 years with us, and mobile arrived when the financial crisis also arrived. So it's been a real dichotomy, a real dilemma for ourselves. But we absolutely look at it from an opportunity perspective as opposed to a pitfall perspective.
Well, what are the types of learnings you've had over the last couple of years that people should be aware of?
I think that probably the biggest ones, to be very honest, are the cultural learnings, and cultural from a customer perspective and cultural from the organisation's perspective. So just to give you a sense on those, we've started really working with MPS and ease to serve and so on over the last couple of years. We talked to 800 customers a week, and they're telling us, make it easy to do business with. That's what they're saying. Make it simple. Make it easy to do business with. And the more we attempt and the more we try and talk to our customers, they're saying, no, make it easier, because the new businesses that are appearing, the Googles, the Amazons, the Halos, the Airbnbs, they are easy to do business with because digital is customer experience at the end of the day. So we're really forcing ourselves to look at our channels, but also the way we build our value chain to deliver our services. We've got to simplify those. It's not always about technology. And we've got to make all our products and all our services available for all our customers in any channel that they want at that particular time. The other big thing is the cultural piece, which is absolutely massive, because the technology, and forgive me for saying it, is boxes and wires. And it's putting those together. But it's our ability to move our IP, just our innovation potential forward to actually see what's happening on the outside world, address our technology, but actually to put it work to make it easier for customers, simpler for customers to do business with. And we're actually learning that using technology to make it easier for ourselves to work within the bank together is a massive piece. We just launched Yammer, social media, to help us to, I guess, up the ante in terms of engaging across the business, and that's helping us to learn how to use digital on the inside, just as importantly on the outside. We've been up and running in the social media channels about 2 years. We're on Twitter 24/7 at this stage, so we've quite a bit of experience. It was really a dance floor. When we started this thing out, we just didn't know what to do and how to do it. We really didn't. But we've probably learned over that period of time that this term omni-channel probably for us really comes to life in the social channels. So we see a lot of activity coming into us, a lot of general queries, but we see some people coming in with those specific queries. And what we do is we take them offline very quickly. So our teams are trained to kind of identify how to engage with customers, get to the nub of the issue very quickly, and take them offline. The other big thing we're seeing in social, it's helping us to see probably before our technology sees that there's a problem with our technology. So we can see where an ATM is down. We can call the branch. We can get them to maybe get out and deal with the customers, perhaps before even the customers got to the counter. So incredibly powerful channel for us.
Over-automate service and completely remove the human touch from it, that's where it gets dangerous for the customer. If you use technology to support the customer journey, to make things easier for the customer and to help them to talk to you in the right way, then it's a really, really powerful support.
In Blizzard, have you any insights that you'd like to share from your experience of customer service and digital?
So we probably do it completely the other way around to almost every other customer support centre. So we are in a place where probably a lot of my counterparts in the industry would like to be, in the customer service industry. Our demographics are such that our players, our customers, are all online already. In fact, sometimes our challenge is getting them to talk to us when we need to, because they're online, they're in that space. Most of our channels are online in some form or another, and very little of our work is through traditional voice channels. So I think, one of the things that Martin said earlier that really resonated with me was channels multiply and don't die. One of the learnings we've had is actually introducing extra channels as we've gone along, because we basically started off as in-game chat, web chat in the middle of our biggest franchise. We've added other things in, we've brought in voice and all those other things. And it's like what they call the M25 syndrome in the UK. You just get more and more traffic through. And none of them really go away. External web chat for us in the last couple of years has been a really fascinating journey, because as Nicola alluded to, that really is the thing of the future. It's the thing that's growing the most for us. And the thing that has probably surprised us the most, what has ended up happening is that we haven't channel shifted from voice to web chat, which is what we expected. We haven't seen that behaviour. What's happened is we've taken it from tickets, from emails, and actually from in-game chat. And I think that's been one of our biggest learnings is not to make assumptions in terms of what your customers will do, and try not to drive it based on efficiency and all of those things, but really to put yourself into that customer's shoes and watch their journey as they come into contact and talk to you.
One of the things I do in my current role is I spend a lot of time out talking to CIOs and business leaders, so I would talk to hundreds in any given year. And I find it interesting. And first of all, I believe every business will have or can have a digital representation. So if you don't have a plan to be represented digitally, good luck, right? So, because your competitors will. So at a time when businesses need to become more digital, I would expect IT functions in the organizations to be more relevant. And yet what we find when we talk to people is actually the IT departments are still not sitting at the leadership table. They're still not engaged in creating or driving the IT strategy or the digitization strategy. So there's a disconnect there. There's something funny going on. I find in the conversations I've had, particularly with IT leaders, is they're trapped in what I would call traditional IT. So they're busy, they're smart men and women, but they're stuck doing things the way it's always been done, and they almost can't free up the mind share to go have those new thoughts and think of a strategy. It's a good example of when it is done right, how it works. So there's a disconnect. Management is more science than art, and leadership is more art than science, even though there's an overlap. And I think most organizations are overmanaged and underled. So when you think about culture, that's a critical part of a leadership role. You want to come to work and be inspired, ideally. I mean, let's not just come to work and be motivated. The best work is done when people are inspired. If you want a simple example of this, if you ever struggle to get out of bed in the morning for work, but you play golf, you'll have no problem getting up at 6 a.m. for a round of golf because you're inspired. That's the difference, right? Our energy levels are different. So leadership is critical for that, but it's also critical for being able to set a strategy. I think a good leader, an appropriate leader for a given challenge, will be able to see the past, the present, and the future, keep them all in their heads, and also be able to listen to the different perspectives. This is the first time in history we've had 4 different generations in the workplace at the same time. This is really important. There are differences across the generations. If you're one of the people that says every generation thinks they're different, I have news for you, they are. Okay? And that's a leadership challenge. Because you as a leader, whatever generation you're coming up from, whatever background you're coming from, you have to have the mental architecture to be able to take in all those different perspectives and piece together the best from them all to build a strategy and then inspire those people to do their best work. So I think leadership is absolutely central to the kind of transformation that we're talking about.
I have an interesting case of a customer who has gone through a whole transformation, a whole customer experience transformation, where they've done all the work at the centre. So at the centre, they have gone and they've put in best of breed in terms of metrics and numbers and data and the flashing lights and telling them what's that. And we have a process with them where they tell us their plan for the year, and as they say, so you know what to sell us, which is a good way of operating. And I said, so how did it go last year? How did that initiative work? And they said it didn't work very well. I said, why didn't it work very well? And this company is in the photocopying business, right? And they said, well, what we did was we actually realized that, and this is about nomenclature and job titles and all this kind of stuff. They said, we have 5,000 guys who go around in vans to service our customers, right? And we call them maintenance engineers. But there are 5,000 who deal with 4 customers a day, which is 20,000 customer interactions face-to-face a day. And we don't capture any of that. We don't value those guys. We call them maintenance engineers. So we've gone and done all this work at the centre and made really cool CX time, but our actual customer interaction and our customer interface is done really badly. Now, why did they know that? Because they started measuring these things, right? And one of the problems we have is that we have 2 things that are going on out there. One is that people aren't measuring, so they're doing and not measuring, so they don't know what's working or what's not working. And you get a bit carried away by maybe some of the some newspaper kind of media which will distract people and make a big fuss. So there's no point in expecting. You have to inspect, right, and put the data around it. And the second thing that needs to happen is that we've created this awful word called data scientist. Right? And by calling it a data scientist, we've made it sound hard. Right? So some stuff requires data scientists, right? But there's a continuum. And I don't know why we've gone from having business analysts who did a pretty good job to ignore them because they're no use. But we have it around, and we need to have data scientists. And guess what? Let's all go and tell our kids to become data scientists, because that's where the opportunity is to make money. We have got to find, and it's about the culture, and it's about let's go and have a culture of measuring these things, but more importantly, inspecting them. More importantly is not measuring against a set of predefined KPIs. Let's learn what the data is and then put the KPIs when we know what it is. Because if you go looking for it, you're going to find it. And that's the problem we also have, is that too many people go looking for the answer, and that's going to give you the answer to the question you've asked. But if you've asked the wrong question, you're in doo-doo.
Thank you very much.
What drives disruption is technology that allows new entrants to come into the market. So the legal profession, for example, will move very quickly to digital when we have some kind of peer-to-peer or crowdsourced legal capability driven by software, which is already happening in the US. So, if you want to set up a company, you can, pay $4,000 or $5,000 to a lawyer, or you can pay $100 and do it online with a pretty standard boilerplate contract. I think what's driving digital is competition. And because now it's so easy to set up a software company, like you don't have to have huge capital investment, you rent some servers from Amazon or Microsoft, or BT, or and you get going. You know, it's easy to. So it's great from the point of view of efficiency in the market. I think the trick for you guys in the IT industry is. It's kind of like when the American asked the Kerryman for directions. He says, I wouldn't start from here. It's very dangerous and very risky if you start from a traditional legacy IT infrastructure to go to this digital world. I'd say, step over onto Nicola's dance floor, pretend you have a clean sheet of paper, and then look back at the call center and think, how can I make contact center part of my digital strategy instead of trying to wrap all that digital around the contact center, because the channels never go away, and it's actually an N-squared problem. There's loads of integrators and consultants that would like you to get to repeat the CTI horror stories from the past, so don't do it. Start with a lightweight digital approach and go from there.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, so I think every business will have a digital representation, as I say. And I've had this conversation, and I've had people say to me, well, what about like agriculture? But absolutely, agriculture already is heavily digitized and is becoming more so. And one of the reasons Ireland has access to the US market, again, is because we have such good tracking, right? And that's basically, very heavily dependent on technology. But if you look forward, and back to the leadership thing, I think leaders that inspire me generally practice the art of the possible. And if you think about the future piece, so the Internet of Things is the next big conversation that's coming. So we've talked about SMAC, social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, and we still haven't landed the benefits of those really yet, right? And the next one we're talking about is the Internet of Things. And if you can see the Internet of Things, all of these things, social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, exceptionally simple concepts. So why do we complicate them so much? If someone can't tell you what they are in 2 or 3 sentences, they don't know what they're talking about. Or they're just trying to flannel you, right, and charge you $2,000 a day for consulting. But if you look at practicing the art of the possible and bringing those things together, a simple example is the automotive industry has done amazing things by using in-car technology. So when we used to bring our cars in, and they'd plug it into a machine and take the telemetry from it, and so after releasing a new car into the market, a year later they had telemetry that told them how these machines were operating. Now they can put SIM cards into those, and they can upload that telemetry on a daily basis, and that information can be analysed, and they can make changes on the manufacturing floor within weeks of that car going onto market. Simple, but using the Internet of Things. Another simple example, there's a lot of talk about, from the two great presentations, by the way, and talking about the experience, thinking about the experience. And one of the things about that is, if you think about the experience and then you think about how to monetize that, what you're monetizing is service as an experience as well. Simple example was there's a company that makes elevators in Germany. And their traditional way of selling an elevator is they sell you an elevator or they'll lease you an elevator. Now what they'll do is they'll sell you an elevator as service. So they'll install them in your building, and they will use the telemetry from the Internet of Things and all of the receivers we have, and they will charge you for every person that steps in and how far they travel. So I can sell you something, disrupting a market that's been exactly the same essentially for over 100 years, just by using the new technology. There's just some simple examples. If catch me for a coffee later, I'll give you loads more. But that's really what leadership is about in this digitizing world. You've got to practice the art of the possible and join up the different technologies.
I think that despite the fact that we're pretty high tech in terms of how we deal with our customers and frontline, our people are at the very heart of the contact centre, and the emotional connection with the player goes through the technology and the chat and the conversations. So that's probably one of the key things. The other thing, which I think again is something that Martin was referencing earlier, is the focusing on efficiency versus effectiveness. We actually already do things like measure our agents solely on FCR and CSAT. AHT is something for me to worry about in terms of budgeting and how many people we need. We do not measure our agents on that. We have a kind of a minimum productivity threshold that they have to be asleep not to meet. But other than that, it's we really focus on the interaction with the players and the customers. So those are probably the key differentiators for us in terms of having people who are our players and our customers and our fans, so they connect really, really well. on that customer experience part, and the fact that we don't use probably traditional metrics in the way that many other centres do. So we provide that better experience.
Well, it was interesting. Yesterday, I was getting the Heathrow Express from Paddington to Heathrow, and all the numbers have been published in the Evening Standard of all the retailers over, and it's really hard to make a decision, right? Because Tesco was up, Sainsbury's was down, Marks and Spencer's was up in food but down in textile, and somebody else hadn't done any sales or anything, and they were up 45%. So the point about this was you couldn't make a decision on anything, right? And that's because we operate in. Our world now operates in 13-week cycles. Right? We review everything in 13-week cycles. So the most important thing that I say to anyone is, clearly you've got to operate in that 13, but you can't be reactive. Have a plan and make sure you go against that. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is you've got to have that, and you mentioned it already, is that leadership from the top, because if the top don't care, who else cares? Right? In the analytics space, we had a big event in San Francisco a few months ago, and we had a customer speaking, and it was really fantastic. And his boss said to me, he might say all that, but actually Excel is our biggest, big. And do you know why? Because nobody owned analytics, right? He was a middle manager, and he was trying to do his stuff, and this CFO came back from that event and said, "I've now seen the future, and I'm going to put my hand up, and I'm going to own analytics," right? And he's now on a program, and now we've got Ian at the appropriate level with this organisation, and they're well admired, and we all know them, their household name, but they're a mess, right? They are the swan. They're going along at the top. Underneath, it's a glue and elastoplast and sticky back plastic and everything. So, but the interesting thing about that was that no one really cared because no one understood, right? At the high level, really good businessmen, and women, but they weren't really aware of what they should be doing. And the problem for them is that they're accountable on 13-week cycles. They're like a football manager who's got about a 3-match lifespan, and a CEO has got a quarterly cycle, and then it's very hard to put a 3-year. So what they're trying to do, and the phrase we're using at the moment is, let's go through and let's transform your business, but let's do it by sprinting. So we have this phrase, transformational sprints. And if it doesn't fit into that, don't do it. Yeah, but it's a challenge for them all.
We're not becoming a digital business, we're digitalising our business. And what we see, and what I see that's really interesting, is our corporate bankers. Because corporate banking tends to be a very relationship-driven, very personal, very an insight-driven, and quite an intuitive part of the business. Digital is very associated with consumers, partly with business, but much less with corporate. But what we're doing is we're working very closely with our corporate bankers to turn that knowledge, to capture that knowledge, to put it into repositories and use analytics and use digital to actually turn that intuitive knowledge and that data. We have a huge amount of data on our customers, on their patterns and on their trends, to turn it into insights where we change the essence of our engagements at a corporate banking level from the bank looking at how the corporate is performing to the bank looking and providing insights and information to the corporate about how the corporate is performing for their business. So that's a very different tilt for us to have an engagement with a customer. And culturally, that's quite different from the corporate, from a corporate banking perspective. But that's how that probably brings together how we're looking to use analytics, how we're using to bring digital, but that leadership and that cultural aspect to change the way we think about what we do with customers, but simply using analytics and using digital as a means to do that. There's a huge displacement of our activity in terms of monitoring and in terms of budget towards digital channels, just purely because that's where clients and our customers are doing the business. Over 90% of our interactions are done digitally now, and that's going to move very closely to 100%. Certainly, the sophistication we see of cyber has dramatically moved across. I just read an article this morning, and it looked at in the US. The sequence or the number of attacks in the second half of last year was 50% less than a year previous. But the amount that has been gained back from cyber attacks has grown exponentially. So there's a bigger threat but the sequence of or the number of threats is very smaller. So the sophistication of the cyber crime is very significant. We're spending a lot of time on that in the bank, but equally we're starting to spend a lot of time with education and awareness with customers, because there's only so much of the technology and and only so much protection that we can provide within our own systems. We're actually finding that it's at the customer system is where it's perhaps it's weaker, because they're not a technology business. They're running their business maybe not so focused on their infrastructure, on their hardware, and their software. So we see a big role for ourselves to play in helping the customer protect their side, while we equally are displacing a lot of money now and a lot of time and resource, and actually looking towards innovation to tackle it on our side.
Yeah, before analytics, I used to run our security business, and it was. I'm really glad I don't run it anymore, because it was shocking what I saw out there. Because everybody, it's like world hunger and peace and poverty. Everybody believes security is an important thing, but I'm not going to pay for it. Right? And what you have in business is you have two things. You have what they call a chief information security officer, who sits there and sets policies and standards. And then you've got a business who then decide what they're going to implement or not implement, and they will make a decision based on risk. There's a cost that goes with that. With security, you get no value other than the brand damage when the shit hits the fan. Excuse the French. And it was amazing when they hit the fan. Customers ring us up and say, "Come in and help us." And we say, "Well, we've been talking to you for the last 2 years about this, and you've told us to. Now we need you. Get in here. And by the way, money's no object." And that's the interesting thing is that balance and trade-off between the brand damage and the actual cost for. It's like health insurance, house insurance, motor insurance, right? It's that trade-off. But when there's a cyber attack or something goes in the paper, it's amazing what comes out of the woodwork. But it needs that to happen, frankly.
Just add something there, please.
So I mean, I agree with everything that's been said, but just take a slightly different angle for a minute. If you're a medium enterprise, even if you're a large enterprise, I could pretty much promise you're not spending more on security than a Microsoft or an Amazon or even the Bank of Ireland, right? And yet, what is interesting when people look at moving as a resistance to moving to the cloud, they talk about data and their concerns about data and data in the cloud. But I think we could pretty much promise that if you put it in the cloud with one of the big providers, they've got a better security setup than you're likely to have, right? Now, the other thing I find interesting, and this flips between the security component and the data analytics piece. You know, when people say, I don't want to put my stuff up in the cloud, for example, because of concerns about data security, they'll say, data is my greatest asset. And then if they remember corporate speak, they'll say, after people. People's my greatest asset, and then data is my next greatest asset, right? So how many companies do you know have data on their balance sheet? If it's your second greatest asset after your people, why is it not on your balance sheet? Why can you not quantify the value of that? And frankly, I think it's because of an absence of the things that we've been talking about. Taking the time to understand it, taking the time to think, how can I unlock value that's trapped in this data? Right? And another thing to consider here is you've got structured data in your organization that we've just established you probably don't understand the real value of. But then you've also got unstructured data. And unstructured data is very interesting, because I think that's stuff that people don't think of as data. A simple example, and I've used this before with people, is you're in the retail business and you've got in-store video. You use in-store video to catch shoplifters, or what they call in that sector, stock loss prevention. Right? So, but it's a very analog model. Often what happens is they might be lucky to spot someone suspicious in the act, but often what happens is they take an inventory, they see something's gone missing, and then they go back retrospectively and they look at the video and they say, oh, it's the guy with the red hair and the limp. The next time he comes in, we'll keep an eye on him and we'll nab him. Right? Very analog. Imagine if you said, okay, I'll look at that video as data. And you can now. You can take that as a digital form and you can store it in Hadoop clusters for quite low cost. Now you can do analytics on it. My face on a video, in a digital video, is just bits and bytes. So you could technically watch an individual customer walk through the store and watch their path as they go through the store and watch where they stop at the till and then tie that with the data from the till to understand what that customer bought. Now you can digitally understand the pattern of traffic, behavior to the sales. That is literally gold dust in retail. But that's taking what people are not seeing as data today, what I call unstructured, marrying it with structured data, what's in the till, and unlocking business value. But we have to stop hiding behind the fact that we're afraid someone will steal our data. Because frankly, the opportunity to unlock value from the data is much bigger than the risk if you do it properly.
Yeah, I mean, we're the kind of communications alternative to call center for digital business. That's what we've set out to build. And it really is about integrating communications into your digital strategy and using, in the same way somebody talked about content personalization earlier, where I think it was you, where every different page is different. What we want to provide is communications personalization. So only offer voice to the people who will buy if they get voice. Only offer chat to the people who will be helped if they get chat. Only connect this type of customer who's been on this type of journey with this type of representative because we know that's got a higher likelihood of closing the deal. So it's using predictive analytics and machine learning to make the experience better. And it's kind of a lightweight approach as opposed to the, let's have a big IT project that lasts 9 months and integrate everything that could possibly be integrated together.
Do customers not find that a bit invasive, that you know what they want?
Well, I mean, guess what? They already know what you want because they'll serve you ads, they'll serve you content, they'll serve you product offers based on your demographics, where you are, your IP address, what you've been doing on the website, what white paper you've downloaded. So for, one takeaway for this audience is if this is a new world for you, the idea of personalization and the idea of marketing automation, find the person in your company who's responsible for that and buy them lunch, right? Because we need to bring these worlds together. I mean, Gartner estimates that marketing is going to spend more in IT than the CIO by 2017. What that really means in practical terms is that marketing is coming after the IT budget. So it's in our interest to get to know those people. What I find when we're selling our product, which is kind of between marketing and IT, is that I'm often introducing them to each other at the meeting, right? Which is not good, right? I mean, so that's one piece of advice I take away for you guys is, get comfortable with these new technologies, get to know the people who are making the decisions because that's the future.
Thank you.